I would, if you have any viewers in now and then about car.
Okay, perfect.
All right, has everyone signed in?
Hey, do we have quorum now?
No, not yet. Now we do.
All right. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good, good. Thank you, Tim. All right. So we'll start with approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes from last week? Ethan?
SB3 was referred back to committee, not tabled, and the minutes reflect the library former.
Kate, could you make that change? Yeah. Okay. With that change, are there any corrections to the minutes? All right, the minutes are approved. So we'll move into new business. Tonight we are joined by Dr. Mann, the director of the University Counseling Center. So Dr. Mann joined Wake Forest on April 19th, 2021. She came from the University of South Carolina, where she was the director of counseling and psychiatry. Yeah, nice. Yeah, so Dr. Mann is still a newer face at Wake Forest, but we still love her. And she's here tonight to hear from us, hear some of our concerns about the UCC and mental health on campus. And hopefully we'll be able to come out of this meeting all understanding each other better and have a really nice productive dialogue. So Dr. Mann, if you could please join us.
Brandon, before we get started.
Yeah. Jackson,
Motion to suspend the rules. Second.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Rules are suspended. So you should just see
All right. Thank you all for having us this evening. I know you have plenty of other business to get to, but I appreciate the opportunity to get before you. SGA, ever since I got here, has been an important partner with me in thinking through where we want to take the UCC. I met with Alan Schwartzberg probably in my first couple of weeks, I think. And so I really appreciate that. I brought with me tonight a longer time UCC person, Dr. Demetria Champion, who many of you may have had some encounters with, who is our Associate Director for Community Engagement. She is a valuable resource to any student organization or student groups who wants to research and reach out and get more information or connect with us in any way. So I wanted to make sure that you all met her as well. Tonight what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about a couple of different things that are happening all at once. So I think some of the confusion about what's going on with UCC right now is because there's lots of things going on with UCC right now. And they've all converged at one time. But I think it will be helpful for us to kind of parse them out one at a time and talk about each one. So the first thing,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hello. Okay.
All right.
Now it's
All right. So starting with kind of our mission statement, our University Counseling Center really is committed to the mental health and well-being of all students at the university. And often I think there is a focus on the students with mental health conditions and that have mental health challenges. And certainly that is a group of students that we want to make sure we are supporting in a way that allows them to meet their educational and academic goals. But I prefer a strategy where we serve all students. In addition to being service providers, we are educators. So we are a part of your educational mission. Will anybody care if I take this down? Oh, sorry. Thank you. It's hard to breathe and talk to you. We heard. So in addition to being service providers, we are part of the educational mission of the college and university. So certainly we could exist as a licensed clinical psychologist, I could exist outside the university. But there is a particular reason why I choose to work in educational institutions, and that is because of the value I place on education. So imagine for a minute that we had an incoming student, a freshman student, coming into the university who knows nothing about mental health. They've never had any kind of experience with mental health providers in their community. They don't have anyone in their family who has a mental health condition. And then they go through their 4 years here, they graduate, and then they experience a crisis in their life. What would happen for that student? And so when we think about what we are doing in terms of preparing you all to go out in the world, understanding how to care for your physical being, your mental and emotional being, your spiritual being is all a part of the Wake Forest kind of philosophy. And I think we would be doing you a disservice if we just focused on providing you with the service while you're here. You can imagine that a student, an incoming student, even if they had experience with say mental health condition or therapy before they came to college, if, for example, that student met with Dr. Champion for their entire 4 years here and got very attached to her, then they end up in the same place when they graduate as when they started, depending on a particular therapist now having to start that process all over. So a part of the educational part of the UCC is to not only provide the service, but to provide the education about the service. And so that's what I'm going to do. I heard somebody gasp already when you saw my slide with because you were like, I didn't know I was going to have to go back to statistics last night. But I'm an educator, so just indulge me for like 10 seconds and then we'll get back to the fun stuff. So the way I think about college mental health, and they mentioned that I came here from University of South Carolina. I was there for 3 years, but you can probably tell by looking at me, I have been in college mental health for a very long time, or I've been doing something for a very long time with all this gray hair. So just to give you kind of a short history, I completed my doctorate in probably 2000 something, the early 2000s in the before times, at University of Cincinnati. In their university counseling center, and then worked there for 5 years. My specialization there was trauma and trauma-informed work and minoritized populations. That's why I went there. We had a specialization in minoritized populations. Then I spent some time at the University of Virginia, which is where I met Vice President Penny Rue, and was their multicultural specialist and did a lot of education around multiculturalism and minoritized populations on campus. Moved from there to the College of William and Mary, was director for the first time at the College of William and Mary, stayed there for 8 years. Just in between the time I was at UVA and the College of William and Mary, the tragedy at Virginia Tech happened. So as I was interim director at UVA during that time, I gained a lot of experience with kind of administrative, legal, ethical guidelines. We had a lot of legislators that got very interested in college mental health. So if you can imagine, before that kind of tragedy at Virginia Tech and NIU happened, university counseling centers kind of sat off on the side. Nobody bothered them. We didn't bother anybody. You kind of, as a faculty or staff person, shoved a student into the UCC door, closed it behind you. You never heard anything back. You just knew they got better, and you trusted that. After the tragedy at Virginia Tech, legislators got really, really interested in what we were doing behind that closed door, and decided that they wanted to be able to tell us how to do it, and how long to do it, and how many times to do it, and on what days we should do it. So I got a lot of experience working with kind of global systems around mental health. And then I came to the College of William and Mary, where they were still applying some of the new laws that had been put into place, and so we had to kind of revamp some of those things. And then after 8 years there, went to the University of South Carolina, for a short stint where I supervised. That was the largest group of staff that I supervised, about 40, 45 professionals that consisted of counselors, psychologists, social workers, case managers, psychiatry providers, PAs, and MPs, and so a big diverse group of people. One of the things I learned in all of those years of doing this work is that there are some things about every college campus that are unique. Wake Forest has its own unique traditions, philosophy, the things about this campus and this school that make it special, that made you choose it out of all the choices that you had. I know our students are high achieving, you all had lots of choices of places to go to college. And there are some things about higher education and systems of higher education that are the same. And one of those things is the trajectory of a student. So we start over, people like me and Dr. Champion and Shauna start over every year with a new crop of people who never heard what we had to say before. That's why we say it over and over. We forget that you all may have been here for 2 or 3 years and heard us say it over and over, but we have to repeat it because every year we get a new crop of new students that come in that haven't heard our spiels before. So when you think about the college population, this is how I think about the college population in my head. That green end is that high end tail. These are the people in your classes that you know, no matter where you put them in the world, they're going to do just fine. These are the students that may never come through the UCC door. They're flourishing at Wake Forest. They're doing well academically, socially, physically. They are just crushing it. And for them, we still want to be able to provide a service and education around mental health. Because what we know about these students is that because they're doing well wherever they are, and they're going to be leaders, we want them to be educated about mental health, because we know that some of you who may be challenged by mental health conditions or have a crisis or something that comes up, maybe even once in your life, that's going to challenge you, are going to rely on these people to set policy, to make decisions for large groups of people, to have an impact on other people's outcomes. And we want to make sure that they have the sensitivity to understand what it's like to live with the mental health condition, if that makes sense. That I can do. All right. What is that? The people in the middle, the yellow, are most of our students at any college or university. These are people that are going to do well with normal supports. And now I'm going to ask a question that's not rhetorical, and I want you to guess. What do you think is the #1 presenting problem at colleges and universities that impacts students' mental health? This is before COVID and before times.
Maybe like social issues, like friends, relationships.
Okay, relationships is up there. Stress. A lot of it academic, but other kinds of stress. Not yet. Think about something that would have happened for every college and university student when they were about 5 or 6 years old.
So like phones, like social media stuff?
Nope.
Is it being away from home?
So being away from home is a part of it. So being away from home. How many of you have a pet? How many of you grew up with your pet? Got your pet around that age of like 5, 6, 7, 8? How many of you know that your pet will likely age out while you're at college? That is the #1 presenting problem in most college and university counseling centers. It's a very normal, natural thing. It has more to do with the timing of things than anything about your mental health. Most college students who grew up with a pet are going to lose their pet while they're at college. It can be a very traumatic experience. Most of us, my daughter certainly is growing up with, as the only child, is growing up with her pet as a sibling. It can be a very traumatic experience. Like you mentioned, you're away from home when it happens. You don't have your natural support systems. That's one of the things that brings the students in. Most of your peers won't understand if you say, like, I lost my cat or dog, I'm devastated, I don't think I can go to class. That's not something that a lot of people will express a lot of empathy about. And so that's one of the things that we look at. And those are what we call transitional problems. Those problems can happen to anybody, no matter how healthy you are. And so the people in the middle of the curve, most of our students are going to experience something like that, a breakup, being homesick, away from home, roommate conflict, those kinds of things. that are just part and parcel, like trying to figure yourself out, changing your major. All of those things that are just part and parcel of being at this phase in your life are what we have in the middle. The red end are students that are living with what we call severe persistent mental illness. Most people who are going to live with severe persistent mental illness, those mental illnesses, first of all, come out between the ages of 18 and 34. What we know is that you're going to have your first significant mental health crisis typically between the ages of 18 and 24. Some people have them even younger, depending on the diagnosis and depending on the trajectory of their illness. I worked for a long time with students living with bipolar disorder. Very often bipolar disorder can be triggered much earlier on, and students begin to have crisis much earlier on. Often by the time they get to college, they've been hospitalized at least once for a mental health condition. That doesn't mean that those students still can't be successful, reach their academic goals, be leaders in the community, but a part of that is learning how to manage that successfully. And so for those students, we not only have to provide them education about how to manage that, but the support and systems that they need to manage that. So that's why we partner with other offices like Student Health Center, OAA, to make sure that students have a safety net, and the care teams is to make sure that students have a safety net that's going to help them when they go into crisis or when they're living with some significant mental illness. We work very closely with CLASS. Anybody who has a mental health diagnosis or an emotional issue that rises to the level of interfering with your daily functioning it requires or is able to get accommodations under ADA. And so we work very closely with CLASS to make sure that those people who are living amongst us with invisible kinds of disabilities get the accommodations and support that they need. And so that's what we do on that. So if you look at this curve and you think about what services we provide, it's sort of like, I have a friend that says, imagine a population, and I said, everybody here gets a bicycle. How many of you don't ride bikes? Don't like to ride bikes, don't enjoy, don't want a bike. So if we gave everybody a bike, there's a couple of people that look like they might be, I don't know that I necessarily use a bike. And that's what I think about when we think about individual counseling being the main thing that we do in counseling centers. Individual counseling is great. I've been in therapy. I advocate for everybody to be in therapy. But sometimes when you look at all of the things that are across this, that these students present with, everybody doesn't need a lot. And so what I like to do is create a system where everybody gets what they need. And that's what we mean about equity in the future. So I like to focus on these things instead of giving everybody a bike. The first one is access. I know that as students, you need to know when you are feeling something, you need to know right away, what is this feeling? Why am I feeling it? What is my experience? Because a semester is 16 weeks. We know that at a school like Wake Forest, if you go more than 2 weeks not functioning, not sleeping, not eating, not doing well, that begins to impact your academics. And so we want to make sure that we have in the UCC access for any student at the time when they need it. And so that's what we focus on. The second thing is answers. In the grand scheme of things, in the big world of all kinds of clients that we can have, you all are the ideal client. You're bright, you like to do your homework most of the time. You are introspective, you think a lot about yourselves, you're willing to be verbal and talk a lot about yourselves, express yourselves. And so for that reason, we want to make sure that you not only get treatment, but you get answers. You get an explanation about what is going on with you. Here's what it's called. You can research it on your own. We encourage you to dialogue with your professionals that you're working with, your providers, so that you have a back and forth and you begin to learn how to manage and control your own treatment. And so that's a big part of it. And then the last thing is acquisition of skills. So there's the thing that we do to help you, and then there's the thing that we do to help you understand how you were helped. So we talk to you about, here's why we did this particular intervention for this particular thing. So any of you that have heard of depression, You know that a person can get to the place where they don't want to get up in the morning, when it gets pretty severe. One of the things that we do is behavioral activation. It sounds really funny, it sounds really sophisticated, but it simply means getting you moving again. So when we do our work with you, we are going to prescribe you things that get you moving, but then we're going to talk to you about behavioral activation and how important it is. What that does is give you the ability beyond college to say, I'm beginning to feel this depression thing again. What's some of the things that I can do? So acquisition of skills that will be helpful to you, but also, as I mentioned, helpful to people around you. You all are going to be active citizens in the world. I want to make sure that as you go out into the world, you understand not only how to help yourselves, but to help others. So because we teach you about what it is that we're doing for you to support you, you have not only the ability to help yourself, but to help others. Any questions about what I talked about? All right, that's the big 30,000-foot version of what my philosophy is and what the UCC is going to be doing in terms of our focus. I'm going to let Dr. Champion talk about the thing that's happening right now that's going to get us there.
So, as you heard Dr. Mann mention, everything that we are doing is in service to the students. We've noticed the things that are on social media or on YikYak, and while some of them are given with a sense of humor, the message that we're getting is like, what's going on? I don't understand what's happening. Our needs aren't being met. And so I want to talk a little bit about rapid access and specifically how this is designed to help meet the needs of the students right now. So has anyone not heard of rapid access at this point? Anyone not know what I'm talking about? Okay, one or two people have not heard of rapid access. So what is it? Rapid access is the terminology that we're using for something that we have done in the counseling center before. This time this looks a little bit different because we're still doing teletherapy. Do I have any seniors in here? Anybody who was around when we did walk-in? Nobody. Everybody's gone. Okay, so this system is very similar to when we did walk-in back in 2019. And that was when we would physically walk into the counseling center, which you can still do, by the way, but we're offering teletherapy. So rapid access is, we're calling it one at a time, same-day appointments that are 30 to 50 minutes. So we got some feedback that when we initially started talking about this, people were like, oh no, I get one shot at counseling, I get to go one time and then I'm done. That's not the case. We're calling it one at a time to differentiate it from sort of what people think of as traditional psychotherapy, in which you come, you make an appointment, you do the full intake, we gather information, and then we schedule you for another appointment. That's not happening. When we see you, the goal is to make sure that we're doing some problem identification, acknowledging sort of what's going on, and coming in right in that same session with some solution-focused strategies to help you with that thing. And saying, okay, great, did you get what you needed today? If you feel like you need to come in again, please do that. You can do that the next day, the next week, whenever you feel like you need it. So,
Dr. Champion,
yeah.
Can you talk a little more directly into the mic?
Yep. Let's help. Can you hear me? Sorry. All right. So that's the differentiation between rapid access and what people typically think of with ongoing therapy. The purpose of doing this is that it provides that point of service, like right at the point of contact. By, I think it was the second week in October, with our current staffing, we were packed. So the schedule was full. If you called during the second week of October, you were probably getting a message from Charlotte or Rachel at the front desk that the next appointment was 2 or 3 weeks out. And so, as Dr. Mann mentioned, in 2 weeks, if you're already struggling, if you're not functioning, that doesn't help you very much in the moment. So the idea with rapid access is that we can get people in at the point of contact, so you call on that day.
There are no limits to how many times you can use this service. I feel like I want to reiterate that a lot. Okay, so how does this work? The very first step is you think about a day that you anticipate that you may need some additional support, you may need some strategies, you may need a thought partner to kind of help you think through something that's going on. So on that day, you're going to call our office, call our phone number, and we've got a morning block and sort of an afternoon block. We're asking people not to call the day ahead and be like, can I get in tomorrow? That's not how we're doing this. You call on the day that you need the appointment. So if you know you've got some free time in the morning, call in the morning, call at 8:30 when we open, call at 9, you can call at 10. Whenever you feel like you've got maybe an hour or so, 30 minutes to an hour that you can dedicate and find a private space. Okay? So the next thing is finding a private space. I know that's hard for some students. If you have a roommate or suite mates that are always in the space, is everyone aware that you can go to Deacon Space, so rooms.wfu.edu, to reserve a private space? All of you should have access to that. Dr. Mann worked really hard early before the semester began to identify those spots on campus that would be conducive to teletherapy. So we want to make sure that everybody had access to that private space. So when you call, the front desk staff is going to give you a window. They're going to give you a time that your appointment should be ready. So they're going to send you a link and some paperwork. The paperwork is our version of when you go to see your physician for your annual physical. Instead of, putting the pulse oximeter on you and taking your temperature and your blood pressure, this is our version of that. So we're going to be asking a series of questions to get a sense of what are your anxiety symptoms, your depression symptoms, how have those looked over the past 2 weeks? So we have a sense of a little bit what might be an area or a focus of clinical attention when you come in. So a lot of people, those assessments feel like, oh, why can't I just talk to someone about it? That actually facilitates the process so that when you get in to see the clinician, they're going to check in with you about what you listed on those documents. And that's going to help them get a sense of like, oh, well, it looks like your social anxiety score is really high, your depression score is really high. That's going to help guide their treatment or their sort of treatment approach when they're speaking with you. So we ask you to please do fill those out. And then finally, we ask that people be able to connect within 10 minutes. So if if the front desk says, okay, I got you in for 10 o'clock, here's the link. If you're coming in at like 10:15, they may have contacted another person to say, hey, you're moving up in the line. So we try to give people enough time, but it is rapid access. So we want to make sure that we're getting people in as they've called. Any questions about that?
Yeah. So is the rapid access, is it only over the phone or can you go in person?
It's teletherapy.
Okay, it's over the phone always.
Always via computer. You can use your phone, you can use your computer, so we can see your face and you can see our face.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how is this going so far? This is day 2. We just wrapped up day 2 of rapid access. I talked with the front desk staff because I know I was coming to speak with you all tonight. Yesterday, we saw 9 students during the rapid access morning and afternoon slots together. We had 6 slots that went unfilled. So we had some extra space as of yesterday. Same thing today. We saw 4 people today. There were 7 slots that were unfilled. Now, the number of slots vary day to day because if we have a block of time where all of our staff have to be in a clinical meeting, that's an hour. So that's why the numbers of slots they're not the same every day. But just so you know, again, this is 2 days worth of data, but typically we do this so that we can increase access. So we have the space, we have the access for people to be able to come in to do these brief solution focused sessions. Yeah.
How many students would you is 9 and 4 more students than you would have seen under the previous model a day?
Probably not the 4, but the 9, yeah.
Especially if these are new students that probably we've never seen before. typically on a day, when we were using the old model, in terms of new slots, it would probably be maybe
Yeah.
2 or 3, 4.
Yeah, the way we did incoming students, so new spots for people who had never been into the counseling center before, there might have been 2 or 3 on a particular day. And I didn't put all that in here, but we are keeping track of of the folks who come in, how many of these people are new, this is their first time coming in November, or how many people are returners, if they've been in here, coming back during the rapid access.
So just hypothetically, if 20 students wanted to be seen on November 1st,
Yeah.
and you were able to accommodate, say, 15 of them,
Yeah.
that would mean that 5 were unable to be seen by your offices.
Correct.
Would you privilege them on the next day, or would it just be first come, first serve again on November 2nd?
It still would be first come, first serve. So in that situation that you just described, what our front desk staff would do is they would say to those 5 folks, is this an emergency? So that's gonna be their first question. They're not just gonna be like, oh, we're full today, try again later. They're gonna ask them if it's an emergency, and they have a specific form that they use where a student can check, here are the, these are, things that are going on for me right now. Or there's also a line on that form that says, none of these apply to me, but I'm in crisis today because, and it allows them to fill in the blank. So anytime, and this is any day, anybody who identifies that this is a crisis or this is an emergency, they're gonna move up, and they may potentially shove someone else out. But those folks would be asked to call back the next day, unless it was an emergency.
And one of the reasons we don't plug people in the next day is if you think about your schedule, there are students who, Monday might be a great day for them to hang around and talk to a counselor. On Tuesdays and Thursdays when I got class all day. And so this is really based on your schedule and you choosing when is the best time. So even if we kind of front loaded those people, if that doesn't work for their schedule, that's more slots that kind of go on you. So we try not to do that.
Is there a system to check back with people who come through and be like, how are you, keep up with them? Because I'm not an expert in this like you guys are, but I thought that homeland therapy could build a robust system where you can, restrict the mental health. A 30 to 15-minute session at one time with no follow-up. From what I've been hearing, from my constituents, would not be helpful by any means. And so is there a system to check back with these people regularly? Come through asking for help, so that it's not just one 30-minute session, but an ongoing commitment to help.
So one of the things that we have talked about as a staff, that we given resources to staff for, is about the efficacy of single session work. So the way that we're doing this isn't something that we just pulled out of the air. It's like, you know what, let's just see it one time and see if that works. There is actually sort of an evidence base around this modality of work in particular. So I hear what you're saying. My constituents do not believe that this is going to be effective for them. And so what we would say to that is we do want people to connect. And if they feel like, I know right now that that's not what I need. I don't need a quick solution-focused strategy. I don't need sort of here's my real specific problem, and I really want to have that ongoing relationship, the more traditional way that we think about therapy. We can help them connect with that.
So just to follow up with you, so is there any steps to so if someone comes in one day, has that urgent session, is there any steps following on that?
So
Those 9 people who came in, what's the timeline for when they'll be reached back out to see how they're doing after that 30 minutes? So that if you're saying it works, and you're an expert, just so that there's data saying that here's the 9 people that came in, a week later they reported that they were feeling better. Is there anything for that?
So yeah, we do a client satisfaction survey, and we have specific questions in our client satisfaction survey specifically about rapid access. So it'll ask them questions just generally about their therapy experience. It'll ask them, did you use the rapid access system? And if they say yes, because some people may not, if they say yes, then it'll drop down to another set of questions that are specific about rapid access. And so by that, we're gathering information from them about how was this for you? Was this effective for you? I will say when we did this in 2019, we had a similar reaction from students like, this is the worst, this is gonna be not great. And that's not what the data bore. When we went to those client satisfaction surveys and we were able to look at like, how were people able to engage with us? Did they feel helped by the single session mode?
And when that, sorry, last question. When is that survey given? Like,
The survey, the client satisfaction survey is done at the end of the year. So anybody, so let's say they engage in therapy throughout the fall semester, if they come back in the spring, that's fine. Even if they don't come back in the spring, everybody, so the counseling center year goes from June 1 to May 31. Anybody who at all engaged in our services at all will get that survey.
Thank you.
One of the things I would add is if you remember back to the slide with the normal curve on it, the red people on the red end, if they come in for rapid access, we have places to put them where we manage and monitor. And they're not gonna leave a student who is at high risk, high stress, high acuity, and in high distress, people that we really do need to be working with. Those people are gonna go into a sheet for just those people. Most of these one-time or 1 or 2 time sessions are gonna be for people who are, right now, at this time of the year, we see a lot of academic distress. And we see students coming in saying, oh my God, I failed the test, I don't know what to do. And their options are often, am I gonna drop this class? Am I gonna change my major? Am I gonna go to tutoring? Am I gonna take a B and live my life? Am I going, so we can often talk them through that and provide some really, some coping skills around, okay, so that was this one test or this one class. Here are some things you can do to prepare better in the future. Let's talk about your sleep, your eating, all those things that go by the wayside when you become really distressed. And how can you get back on track with those things that are gonna keep you healthy? And so that's why it was really important for her to say, it's not limited to one time. If we see you once and you say, yeah, that didn't get it, you just come back.
I have a few questions. So in 2019, you said that you used this system and it went well, like the results were borne out, student satisfaction, et cetera. Why was there need to change that then if the results were so positive to begin with? I don't really see any for that. And the second question I guess I have is for students who have been on a have been with the therapist for multiple weeks now, even multiple years, and they don't necessarily have depression or bipolar disorder or any serious disease, but it does help them in terms of imagine their day-to-day. Will they be able to continue meeting with that same therapist as they have been for the last year to 2 years? My final question is, it was about a week ago where on your website it was the front page was different, and you said that if you have a need for ongoing therapy, we would refer you to an off-campus provider. I was wondering if Wake Forest will subsidize all costs associated with that, because I don't know why they wouldn't if the promise has been given to students to provide therapy, and then you're referring for continued therapy to outside providers. Thank you.
I'll take the last one. You want to take the first one? You want to start with that one?
Let's start with the first one, but I forgot what the first one was.
The first one is I understand the change of therapy medium. If the results for this system worked so well in 2019, why you reverted back to the previous one?
So the previous one being you start in the beginning of the semester and you just get seen throughout the semester.
Meeting the medium before these changes occurred. So it's 2019, now it was the new system 2020, and now it's the one that we have today.
So the system in 2019 that was walk-in was done around this time. It was a little bit later in the semester, but it's around the end of the semester where we're trying to expand capacity. So really, we kept the same thing. The only differences are it's a little bit earlier this time. We start November 1 instead of a little bit later, and it's teletherapy. So the change in 2020 was mainly teletherapy, as you know.
I meant more I guess in the lines of you mentioned how this is now rapid access, and you made rapid access in 2019 too, I believe, that's what you said. So I was wondering why was there a break from rapid access 2019 to 2020? why did you revert back to a different system?
Rapid access is really something we do only at the end of the semester.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you think about you're running out of semester, like there's literally 2 or 3 weeks of how many of y'all are leaving campus, going home, going away from North Carolina. Most people are gonna go somewhere other than here. So when we get to the end of the semester, when we are literally running out of time for new students to come in and engage with a provider on an ongoing basis, this works better. It's just, whatever you need to deal with at that point. We don't wanna, like she said, by October 1st, we were already booked out for 2 or 3 weeks. If we had continued to book students in ongoing therapy for the next 2 or 3 weeks, at some point we run into a wall where we have to just say no to students altogether. Like, all of our slots are filled, all of our clinicians are seeing people already who came in before you. Sorry you got to the end of the line, too bad. And that's not okay. So rapid access allows us to be able to keep the door open all the way to the end of the semester for students that need to do that. Because we know that some of our more vulnerable students, some of our students who are not assertive, are not going to be the first ones that sign up at the beginning of the semester. They're maybe have to run into a crisis or something like that happens before they come in. And so we want the door to still be able to be open at that time.
So is rapid access going to be every semester now at the end of it? Because it's not what you're saying that it happens at the end of the semester. So shouldn't that be the case that every semester henceforth should be rapid access?
And typically we do this only with like 2 weeks left. So if you think about after Thanksgiving, when you come back from Thanksgiving, there's only like that last week of classes and then finals. We start to see a lot of no-shows and late cancellations because on that day you have to decide, am I going to study for this exam today or am I going to see my therapist? And those are unused slots that we want to reserve for people who really need them. And so that's typically when you will see us flip to this. Again, I'm a data-driven decision maker. So again, I'm going to go to the data and I'm going to look at, did this really provide us the opportunity to see more students and provide more care? And if ever these numbers change, then we will stop doing rapid access because it defeats the purpose of doing it. It's not just something that we think is sexy. It is, if the data doesn't support us continuing to do this, then we'll continue.
Thank you. And then I guess the second, I'll probably reiterate the second question, which was, I'm gonna give you my example because I use Dr. Paredes about every 2 or 3 weeks. He's fantastic. I love going to him. But I worry that on the website it says that if I have a need for ongoing therapy, I'll be referred to an operating provider. And I wonder, because Dr. Paredes I've talked to for about, through the end of last semester, now I'll continue to do this one. And so he knows a lot about me and is very good. He's very good. So I'm not really inclined to take on a new provider either outside or with someone I don't know. That just goes back to 3 months ago when I was struggling. So I don't really know. I guess the question is can that continue under this current system? Can I continue meeting with Dr. Paredes every 2 to 3 weeks?
I would say it depends. So I'm looking at our time and I'm really worried about you all getting to your business, but I want to address this question because I think it's one that a lot of people have in their head. And it's a big picture philosophy question.
Yeah, I'm just asking myself.
And we got to do just a little bit of math.
Yeah.
There are 7,500-ish students at Wake Forest that we serve. The incidence of depression and anxiety in the general population is about 40%. So what is that number?
40% of 7,500.
Take 8,000.
3,000 something.
Okay. So there are currently 6 providers, 7 providers. Okay, 7 to 9 providers. On average, every provider can see somewhere between 150 and 200 students a year under the traditional model. So that means that first 900 to 1,000 students, if we keep that model all year long, is going to be seen the way you are seen, get their provider. The other 6,500 or whatever that gap is, there is no promise. So while I understand that that's a preference, it actually preferences the first people through the door and leaves a huge gap of students on our college campuses that don't get the mental health support that they need.
So the answer no, I guess, is it no?
It's not exactly.
Okay.
Instead, every student will get an individual assessment and students will get what they need. So some students will be seen long-term, maybe here, maybe in the community, depending on their individual situation. But none of us can afford, like I said, this is an educational process. Even a student who doesn't have a lot of resources, that has a long-term need for supportive therapy, is going to at some point have to leave. Because ultimately the goal is for you to graduate.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to see Dr. Paredes no more.
Sure.
I don't want you to do that the last semester of your senior year. I want to be able to support you to be able to do that at some juncture before that, so that you're not doing that, graduating, negotiating, trying to find a job, and separating, like you're having your parents keep you out of the house all at the same time. It just isn't a humane model. And the literature teaches us that developmentally, many people can navigate that with support over time. So we're going to try to, a lot of students that are incoming that have never had therapy before, aren't therapy savvy, or don't have resources are going to need our support for a longer period of time. But by the time you meet your educational and academic goals, all students are going to have to navigate your insurance plan, with your job, how to find somebody. And that's why we have Tiffany Longjohn, who is our case manager. She will literally sit down with you and for as many times as you need to meet with her to help that transition happen. That's her whole job. And so there's a lot of different kind of moving parts in the UCC to help you to get to that place. But I think my answer to the one single therapist for 4 years is probably that's a no for most students. And that there's always exceptions, but I think for most students that's a no. It seemed like you had three.
The last question was about
the subsidizing the off-campus therapy.
Well, like I guess the question that I want to pose now is that if it's impossible for me to continue with the therapist that I've been having for the last year now, and I do like continuous ongoing therapy, which I had previously and now do not have the ability to have. I was wondering, so if I'm being referred now to an off-campus provider and not at a network, why isn't Wake Forest fully subsidizing transportation costs, insurance costs, and everything associated with that? Because I feel like that was a promise as part of like a mandate of coming here, like these are services that are provided as part of ongoing therapy, and then for our simple needs of mental health to an off-campus provider, even the cost of an Uber could be $15, $20, like $40. UCC can't cover that as part of their support for students with mental health.
I mean, I guess our answer is the same answer that nobody covers everybody's medical or mental health care. That, first of all, I don't know who promised y'all that. The math just doesn't work. That's why I wanted y'all to do the math in your head. Like, if we let the first 300 or 800 people through the door have a therapist, there's tons of students who never get seen. I don't know where that promise came from. This is not the first university I've ever been to where students have that in their head, that they were promised that they'll get a therapist, that therapist will be seen. I think it is set up from expectations. Most people only have, in their K through 12 experience, have the same therapist that you've seen kind of most of your life. And that's the only model that you're aware of and know of. There's lots of ways to provide mental health support in evidence-based ways, in ways that are really effective, that we have to continue to use as effectively so we can see as many students as we possibly can. I don't know, we are running way over time.
Can take two more questions.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, I was playing with the pink mask.
Okay, I was just wondering, so on the UCC's post on October 11th, where it was kind of it's not you, it's us, and y'all talked about how starting November 1st, we'll move to single session solution focused model. So like when I first saw that, and just from some other stuff that like I read through like UCC emails, I very much took that as like kind of like intake and referral, like you see someone, you can get referred and that's it. But I understand from your presentation that you're talking about, I forgot the approach you just said this is called, but you're saying that people can go in as many times as they need for like the rapid action kind of 30 to 50-minute sessions, and like that was a bigger clarifier for me. And I was just wondering if y'all are gonna like maybe share this presentation with the rest of the student body, or like put this in another form of communication, because like obviously Senate is open to our constituents, but not a lot of them come all the time, and like it's live streamed and not everyone sees it. And like I think a lot of students very much think that it's just you can go in once and you're just automatically referred, and they're like, okay, I'm not even gonna bother going, and don't understand that like if they are in an urgent need of crisis, that they can go and see someone day of. So I was just wondering if you're gonna spread that message.
Yes, so that is part of the reason that we're here talking to you all tonight, is we know that you're, as people in student government, that you have a constituency, that we're hoping you can also share this information with them as well. We have shared an FAQ flyer with this, with all of our campus partners, with folks on the academic side. We sent it to the vice president to make sure that she can share this with the dean of the college, so that that can be sent out to faculty members. But we did get some feedback from CLAC, the Campus Life Advisory Council, that y'all don't read emails that come from random people, but if it comes from your faculty, you'll read that. So we're trying to find a way to get faculty to send this message out as well. So yeah, we recognize that that initial language of single session threw a lot of people off, and so that's why we're trying to go around now and help people understand that you can come in as many times as you need to, and if there is that need for ongoing therapy, or the rapid access system really does not fit what you need, we have resources to try to help you get connected to where you need to.
Okay, thank you. Are you planning on possibly updating your social media with that information? Because I know I know not all students here have social media, but I know that's a way a lot of them found out.
Yeah, so the idea is that we are going to do probably tomorrow a live stream at 4:30, a Q&A, where we answer some of these questions. I'm hoping that we can do it at 4:30 tomorrow, and then it'll just be up in our stories after that.
Okay, thank you.
I had somewhat comments, somewhat questions, but my first one is, I know a lot of people like benefit from in-person therapy, like it's just you just get a dimension from that you don't really get over the phone. And I was wondering, first of all, like why we're sticking with that, and then secondly, how many new people you're training, because like while it's unrealistic to say like, oh, Wake has an 18-to-1 like teacher to student ratio, why is that not factored into like the 3,000 students who are going to express mental health? That's way too many counselors. At the same time, like having 9 counselors to 3,000 people who are at risk, it just seems like a really, really low number. And I feel like if everyone tried to utilize or at least come to the Wake counseling, a lot of them would have to be referred. Which I just feel like we could benefit from having. I've heard from a lot of my classmates that they feel like we need to have more staff.
So we are currently understaffed. I don't know if people are aware of that, but we have 3 open positions right now that we are trying to fill. We are having the same difficult time that when you go to your local fast food restaurant, they're like, help wanted, hiring now. Like the Great Recession is happening in college counseling too. All of my colleagues at all the different counseling centers around the country are having a hard time filling their positions and keeping folks interested, as Dr. Mann talked about. There's a different sort of, this is a different kind of work than maybe what a lot of people who are trained in counseling or social work or psychology are necessarily wanting to do right now. So we are trying to attract and interview and get some really good people in, but we are currently understaffed. And I'm saying that because I realize that not everybody knows that we are down several positions right now, so that's part of the reason. To go back to your question about face-to-face, because Winston-Salem and Wake Forest currently has the mask mandate for indoors, we decided, and this was not just the folks in the counseling center, it was also, we consulted with our professional organizations. So American Psychological Association, American Counseling Association, the National Association for Social Work. And it was determined that it was preferable to be able to see the full affect. So if you've got your mask on and I'm trying to do a counseling session with you, I can only see 1/3 of your face. That's not giving me all the information that I need as a clinician to adequately assess you, to look at the affect that you're displaying, to determine sort of what's going on with you based on sort of your bodily cues. And because of that, that was a big part of our decision to maintain the teletheory because I need to see your face. And if Wake is saying, and when Salem is saying, you have to wear a mask when you're inside unless you're 15 feet away, right? That was the thing, like 10 feet away if you're in like a setting like this right now. I couldn't see your face. And so I couldn't do accurate there.
Once the mass restriction ends, is it planning on going back to in person?
So I think it's not gonna be a light switch. I don't know that exactly when we'll go back, depending on when the city or the university change their restrictions. It may be a little while because you also have to take into account people's there's still fear about this. And I know, we all have to be vaccinated, et cetera, but yeah.
Just returning to your comments about like the satisfaction survey issued at the end of the semester, is there anything issued or like any system in place to check in with the people after their appointments? Because if not, I think that would be a really important change.
So the mechanism for checking in with people after the appointment is when we're doing this type of work, the rapid access work with them. Part of the questions that we're asking them before we end the session is, what happened today? What are your next steps? And when would you know that you needed to come back? So we're engaging with them in that process to help them identify before they leave. How will you know, like, what happened? So is there a line in the sand, like, if this happens, like, if I have a night where I'm waking up or I'm having nightmares, whatever it is for that individual. So we're helping them identify when they know that they need to come back.
So the Executive Order 116 signed by Governor Cooper currently allows counselors in the state of North Carolina to practice telehealth across state lines and effectively waive the state licensure requirements that would be in place pre-COVID. That executive order is set to expire on January 5th of the coming year. Do we anticipate that impacting Wake Forest students at all? And if so, has the UCC thought of any contingency plans in the case that it does impact Wake Forest students?
So that was an impact. That was something that we were paying a lot of attention to when we were all still at home, or there were some students on campus, but when we were still working from home, some of the students were at home, like doing e-learning. That was more relevant then because the majority of folks are physically present on campus now, and we're all licensed in North Carolina. That's less of an issue in terms of like, oh, this executive order is going to expire now. Yeah, it becomes an issue if we have a preponderance of students who are scattered across the country or around the world, but it's less of an issue right now.
Just to clarify, do you currently see students across state borders?
Right now, we're not doing that. We were in the middle of the pandemic, and we spent a lot of time figuring out which states, because if Governor Cooper can say it for here, but if the person that I need to see is in Texas, and Texas was like, no, you can't though. So we had a lot of that we were trying to figure out back then.
All right, we're gonna have to cut it off there, but thank you both so much for your time tonight. And thank you everyone for your questions.
And that last graphic that you saw is coming attractions that I think you all are going to be super happy about. And we'll come back and talk about it later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll run through the rest of the agenda, just executive and committee reports. We don't have quorum. We don't need quorum to report. All right, Allie's report.
Yes. Hello everyone, Allie's in here, so I am pretending to be her tonight. The last weekend in January, there is this thing called ACC Advocacy Days. It's a fully funded trip to DC. It's like student government related. It seems pretty cool. And Allie has the application. So if this is something you're interested in, or if you want to know more information about it, please shoot me an email and I will make sure that you get the application and more information on that. Allie is also now serving on the UDEEP committee at the request of President Winty, and we'll have more info about that next week for all of you. Tomorrow, Allie is meeting with the SAPS Advisory Committee chairs, Jackson and Pilar, to do some strategic planning for that. Also, the North Carolina President's meeting is Thursday with the student government presidents of North Carolina colleges and universities. And so Allie would really appreciate it if you all could tell us what you would consider to be SG's top projects/priorities that you would like to share with our peer institutions so she can share it in the meeting. Does anyone have anything?
If you all do, just email Allie and copy Vivian, or just email Vivian, and that would be great.
Yeah, just let me know if you think of anything between now and Thursday, and I would appreciate it. And then Allie is meeting with Heather Gillespie on November 8th, and send her any concerns for ODOG, and please copy me on any concerns for that. That's all I got.
Any questions for Allie's report? Okay. So for me, so thank you all for a great discussion tonight. If you want to follow up on anything, just let me know and we can funnel those concerns to UCC. We only have 3 senates left, so just next week, the week after, and then the week between finals and Thanksgiving. So we do not have Senate the week of Thanksgiving. So don't worry about coming here Tuesday on a Thursday, which is really, at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, which is really like a Friday. So no Senate then. Also, I'm going to be doing one-on-ones for freshmen and new senators, just like Allie did a couple weeks ago. The form will go out in the minutes, but it's all out there if you want to do that as well. Be great to get to know some of y'all a little better. And just be informal, drop by Camino, talk about whatever y'all want. And yeah, student government related or otherwise. Yeah, any questions for our report? Okay, and Brooke isn't here tonight either. SBAC's great, no office hours this week. If you get anything, email her, text her. Yeah. And Kate?
Hi, everyone. So if you had attendance issues, from the midterm report, I already emailed you. So if you got that email and you have any questions or concerns about it, just reply to me. I'm here. Otherwise, for extracurriculars, please continue signing up for Academic Resources Awareness Week. It's been super cool. PR and academics have been working really, really hard on it. So definitely keep signing up for that. It counts as extracurriculars. I know some of you still haven't started, so definitely do that. SG socials will be sent on Thursday. And just a reminder that if you are participating in extracurriculars, to keep filling out the form so that I can count you accurately. And then in terms of meetings with Old Gold and Black, Alexandra and I corresponded mostly by email yesterday, and I basically just passed along info about the upcoming Senate visit today, as well as academic resource awareness.
Any questions for Kate? All right, Vivian.
Hi everyone, tomorrow I'm meeting with all of the student members of faculty committees, and we're just going to discuss what all those committees have been up to. So next week, expect a lot of updates from that. I'm also doing one-on-ones this week for anyone who wants to come chat with me. The link to that will be sent out in the minutes. Other than that, if you're emailing Allie about anything, unless it's like something that's personal that you don't want like a lot of people to know about, please copy me if it's anything that's not like of a personal or sensitive nature. Just because clearly she has a lot going on right now, being on so many committees, and I just want to make sure that everything gets responded to and I'm able to help her manage that. If you want to contact me, there's my phone number and my email.
Any questions for Vivian? Okay. Sean?
No more report today. Kudos to the academic
co-chairs, woo, and PR for the great academic awareness, academic resource and awareness week. Only thing I would say is thank you, Dr. Mann, Dr. Champion, for coming. I think this was much needed. The information was really, really great. I have already given the rapid access FAQs to Janine and Jess so that they can get that out on our social media so we can help build awareness for our students on campus. So if anybody needs anything, you know how to find me, and keep doing the great things that y'all are doing.
Any questions for John? All right, committee report starting with academic.
All right, hello everyone. So not a whole lot from us today, but we have our meeting with ODOC next Wednesday on the 10th. There were 62 responses on the fall break form so far, and we're going to be sharing that with Dean Marsh when we have our ODOC meeting. So if you could take your notes up, if you haven't scanned it already, and sign that big old QR code, that would be fantastic. Other than that, just keep volunteering for AROL. There's going to be lots of cool stuff going on next week. And yeah, text me or Ava if you have any questions.
Any questions for academic? All right, campus life.
Hey guys, thanks for a great blackout game. Seemed like it was really great success. So before I get into more of my report, in cabinet, we talked a little bit about some ideas for the last game of the year against NC State, because I don't think we want to repeat another blackout game. But if anyone has any ideas, you can either shout them out now or email me, because I think a theme would be really fun. And then food trucks yesterday were really great. Thanks to everyone who volunteered. We fed like 350 people, so that was really great. We're working on the crosswalk issues, physical planning, and again, kind of working through the UCC concerns. I think that should do everything from me, but if anyone has any suggestions now, well, email me if you have any suggestions.
Any questions for campus life?
Were all the shirts distributed for the blackout game?
I would assume so, yes.
Any other questions? Yes.
That would be that.
All right. Diversity and inclusion.
So we talked to a forest about the Puppies on the Quad thing. They're hosting it November 12th, and I said we would advertise it here. Just because of the short turnaround, it's unlikely that we'll co-host or sponsor it. But we did talk about as a committee how we might want to support it. And then that WIN stuff has been going on for forever. We finally have an official timeline for everything. And so Dr. Moore, who's in charge of a lot of that, is basically gathering information and writing something up for us with all the details about like why it is the way it is and what's open to change. And we will dig through that. But he's not sending it until after registration this week, because obviously the university director is super busy with all of that. And then finally, we have our monthly meeting with Dr. V on November 9th. So please send me your questions. One of them right now is about renaming on campus and getting a status update on that, because there's been a lot of questions about that. But if you have anything else, either like right now, let me know, or like please email me or Jack about it.
Any questions for D&I?
Is there any discussion about renaming the OT residence hall?
That is what that question for Dr. is about. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so update. We got feedback from Allie Clayton. I know you've all been standing like waiting on the edge of your seats for that. So now that we have feedback, we're gonna work on a soft launch. Kate is being kind enough and sending out the reference sheet and a quick survey for y'all to fill out in the Senate minutes afterwards. If you could please fill that out, that would make my life and Alondra's life so much easier. So please do that. Thank you. We're currently working on reference docs for each of the governing documents and updating the process packet with PR. And then SOC is working on creating a chartering process graphic to add into that. So hopefully we should have that done by the beginning of next week. Currently working on legislation on the governing docs. But beyond that, if you have anything for legislation or the governing documents, let us know.
Any questions for Sherry? Just a reminder for legislation, if you are planning on doing it this semester, I need to know like this week, or else it's just not going to get on the agenda. It's everyone. Physical planning?
Drew's not here, so he told me to say nice dancing. And the rest is on the slide. So he's working on crosswalks. Earth Week's gonna be in April. There's a dining meeting on Monday. And I am not sure what's up with the flat soda in Benson, but I'm sure that Drew's got it all figured out. So that's it for us.
For the record, I don't like flat soda. Any questions for school planning? All right.
How do we follow that? Like,
Thanks everyone who's been volunteering so far. It's been really great so far. Thanks for all of your help. And then just keep signing up for people on Thursday. That's kind of where we need the most student government volunteers. Because you have a lot signed up, but just keep signing up. It's always more fun with more people.
yeah, merch, ETA is November 11th. Volunteer, or I might, lose your merch. I'm kidding, but like, some of y'all didn't come to the pizza panel and it made us a little sad. Post ARA agenda, the light beyond the very long tunnel. We're gonna keep doing the Meet the Freshman Senator post. We're skipping them this week. Engagement tracking, Ethan's making a whole spreadsheet of like how our posts do for academic resources awareness week. So we'll be able to like keep the Instagram, getting promoted to everyone. Hannah is working on these engagement stories to kind of just get our constituents engaged with like little things, just like, oh, like how's your week been and stuff like that. And then we'll also be throwing up the UCC's information on social media once y'all do that as well. So we can let you guys have a big group and everything.
Any questions for PR? Okay, so.
Hey everyone, we had Alexander Hamilton Society and the World Tea Association both present the charters. They did a great job. World Tea Association provided us with tea, which is phenomenal. We do accept bribes, so please tell your friends. In addition, we will be formalizing our spring 2022 chartering timeline. So basically how we're going to go about the same process we're doing right now in the spring. Erin Forbes, for those of you who don't know, works with Sean McNeil, and she sent Amber and I a pretty good outline of the timeline, maybe one or two small tweaks within that, but once we finalize that, we'll share it with you and then distribute that to the student body as needed. So if you have any friends who have an organization and it's pretty well along the way, feel free to tell them to reach out to Erin or Shauna or just one of us if you if we can help them.
Any questions for Saad? All right, thank you, Rory. All right, any Senate reports? Constituent concern? Announcements? Sign up for Academic Resources Awareness Week.
Thank you, Brayden.
That's all. Everyone have a great night. Thanks for
Thanks, Queen.
The button is gone. Uh-oh. I was like, where's the button to stop it? There we go.
Good night.